Assembly at the carpentry. Importance of teamwork.
In a small carpentry shop, hidden at the end of a cobbled alley, the tools lived their day-to-day in apparent harmony until one morning something unexpected happened. The carpenter, a wise man with gray hair and a calm gaze, had been away for a few days, and, apparently, his workshop had decided to take on a life of its own. The noise of the whispers spread throughout the work table. The tools, tired of their differences, decided that it was time to do something about it. So they called an extraordinary assembly to try to fix their problems. The hammer, who always saw himself as the leader, decided to speak first. "I propose that I be named president of this assembly," he said, firmly hitting a board. But before he could continue, the rest of the tools began to murmur in disagreement. "He can't be the president," shouted Sandpaper from the other end of the table. "He makes too much noise. He hits everything in his path no matter how delicate the job is. He always causes a stir and disorder." The hammer, a little embarrassed, admitted that he was sometimes a bit loud and rough in his dealings, but before giving in, he pointed to the screw. "If I have to quit, then the screw should go too. He has to be turned around and around to do his job. He always takes too long." The screw, who was listening attentively, accepted that sometimes he needed to turn around a little more to find his place, but he didn't miss the opportunity to complain about the sandpaper. "If I go, then the sandpaper should be thrown out too. She is too rough in her dealings, always creating friction with the others." The sandpaper, feeling attacked, quickly replied, "Very well, I agree to go, but only if the metro goes too. He always spends his time measuring us all, as if he were the only perfect one here. It makes us feel like we are not good enough." The meter, which had remained silent until then, calmly defended itself. "It is true, I measure. But I do it to make sure everything fits perfectly. My purpose is not to judge, but to help make the work accurate." The discussion was still heating up when, suddenly, the familiar sound of the door opening was heard. It was the carpenter, who had returned earlier than expected. He was wearing his old leather apron, with his pockets full of pencils and small nails. The tools fell into absolute silence, watching as he prepared to work. Without saying a word, the carpenter began to use each tool. The hammer struck with precision to fix the pieces, the screw turned patiently, firmly joining the parts, the sandpaper smoothed out the roughest surfaces, and the meter made sure all the measurements were exact. At the end of the day, a beautiful wooden chair had been created, with every detail perfectly worked out. When the carpenter left, satisfied with his work, the tools looked at each other in silence. The saw, who had so far watched everything from a corner, decided to speak. "Friends," he began, "it has become clear that we all have our own imperfections. I cut roughly and directly, the hammer is strong but noisy, the screw turns and turns, the sandpaper can be rough, and the tape measure sometimes measures us too coldly. But the carpenter, with his wisdom, has shown us something important. Although we have weaknesses, our qualities are what make us valuable." The tools thought about what the saw had said. The hammer realized that his strength was essential to fixing the strongest pieces. The screw understood that his ability to turn gave him the ability to join and hold everything in place. The sandpaper understood that, although it could sometimes be rough, his work was necessary to smooth and give the finishing touch to each creation. And the meter, although it continued to measure, now knew that its precision was vital to making everything fit together perfectly. So, continued the saw, instead of thinking about what we don't do well, let's focus on our virtues and how we can work together to create wonderful things. And so it was that, from that day on, the tools learned to appreciate their strengths and to understand that, together, they formed a perfect team. Each one had its role, its purpose, its value. The differences took a back seat, because they understood that, in the hands of the carpenter, they could transform the roughest wood into the most beautiful furniture. In the end, they all understood that true teamwork is knowing how to unite the qualities of each one to achieve a common goal. And so, each tool, with an inner smile, returned to its place in the workshop, waiting for the next creation, knowing that they were all necessary and valuable.
Welcome to our channel. All copyrights reserved. Don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and select the bell to be notified of new videos.